Federal law enforcement are calling it the biggest drug ring takedown in our region in recent memory. The takedown of two interrelated drug rings led to the indictment of more than a dozen people.
America, check this out. Federal agents just pulled off a massive drug takedown in Seattle that exposes everything wrong with liberal drug policy. They arrested 14 drug traffickers who were specifically targeting homeless people and drug addicts, seizing enough fentanyl to kill everyone in Seattle twice. But here's what's really sick. These drug dealers were literally preying on the most vulnerable people, while Seattle progressive politicians create the perfect hunting ground for them to operate.
The feds say more than a dozen drug traffickers who preyed on the poor and the vulnerable are now off the streets.
What is up, guys? Tyson Dela Cruz here. Thank you so much for rocking with me. One dealer was even caught on a wiretap arranging drug deals from a Costco parking lot while the city handed out clean needles and safe injection sites. This story perfectly illustrates how liberal compassion creates a perfect storm environment for Mexican cartels and drug dealers to prey on American citizens. In this video, I'm breaking down this massive operation, the shocking details of how these drug dealers operate, and why Seattle's progressive policies enable this absolute nightmare. Let me break down the scope of this operation because it's absolutely massive. Federal agents took down two interrelated drug rings operating in Seattle's Chinatown International District and homeless encampments. Did you hear that? Homeless encampments. They arrested 14 people in total, with 11 currently in custody and 3 still on the run.
In this case, we targeted offenders who used both to prey on some of our most vulnerable communities. They dealt in death in the form of drugs and guns.
But here's what makes this operation so disturbing. These weren't just random drug dealers. According to the FBI, these criminals were preying on some of the most vulnerable communities, specifically the homeless community in Seattle. That's Seattle's progressive policies that have abandoned these people on the streets.
Police accusing drug traffickers of targeting the poor and vulnerable.
They preyed on some of our most vulnerable, the homeless, the drug addicted, people who, in fact, deserve our compassion.
The operation involved extensive wiretap investigations that revealed the sophisticated nature of this criminal organization. They weren't just street-level drugs. They were running coordinated trafficking operations up and down the I-15 corridor through Washington, Oregon, and California.
The wiretap was multiple rounds were used within this investigation.
The wiretaps helping the feds gather enough evidence to indict 14 people.
All this stems from a local investigation by Seattle PD that led federal agents from Washington State into Oregon and California as they tracked the drug trafficking network. These drug dealers were making frequent trips, sometimes twice a week, up and down the West Coast.
Followed this case outside of Seattle and Washington State into Oregon and California.
Agents found the source of the supply, believed to be brought from Mexico.
The numbers from this operation are absolutely staggering. In this case alone, they seized over 1.5 million lethal doses of fentanyl. Prosecutors put it, that's enough fentanyl to kill everyone in Seattle twice.
Law enforcement accusing the 14 of trafficking fentanyl, meth, heroin, and cocaine up and down the I-5 corridor in Washington, Oregon, and California. 17 guns also taken off the streets.
They also seized 17 guns, showing these weren't just drug dealers. They were armed criminal organizations operating in American cities. As one official put it, they've dealt in deaths in form of drugs and guns. This operation comes after an earlier takedown in March, where law enforcement seized more than $3 million worth of drugs from this exact same network.
We will continue to pursue drug trafficking organizations exploiting vulnerable populations and remove dangerous individuals from our communities.
So we're talking about a massive ongoing criminal enterprise that is flooding Seattle with deadly drugs while the city's progressive leaders just look the other way. And here's where the story gets absolutely ridiculous. Federal agents caught one of these drug dealers on a wiretap arranging drug deals, get this, from a Costco parking lot.
We even heard one of the suspects on a wiretap arranging drug deals from a Costco.
Think about that. While families were shopping for groceries in bulk, drug dealers were coordinating fentanyl distribution in the same exact parking lot. This perfectly illustrates how normalized drug trafficking has become in Seattle. These drug dealers were so comfortable operating that they were conducting business in broad daylight at a family shopping center. But what's really sick is while these drug dealers were preying on homeless people and flooding the streets with fentanyl, Seattle's progressive politicians were enabling the entire operation with their harm reduction policies. The groups continued to traffic even after March seizures, showing how entrenched these operations have become. Agents found the source of the supply believed to be brought from Mexico, confirming this was a direct cartel operation targeting American communities. Seattle has spent millions on safe injection sites, clean needle programs, and quote-unquote compassionate drug policies that essentially create a customer base for these cartels. Instead of getting people into treatment, they create an environment where drug dealers can operate in absolute impunity. And here's the detail that mainstream media is trying to bury. The DOJ tells us that 3 people charged in this drug trafficking investigation are here without legal status and have been previously removed from the country.
Now, the DOJ tells us that 3 people charged in this drug bust investigation are here without legal status and had been previously removed from this country. The DOJ is still waiting on confirmation on the others.
So we had previously deported criminals who come back illegally and immediately resume trafficking deadly drugs to American citizens. This is exactly what happens when you have weak border security and sanctuary city policies. Seattle's sanctuary city policy essentially creates a safe haven for these criminal organizations. When local law enforcement can't cooperate with ICE, it becomes much easier for deported criminals to return and resume their operations. The fact that some of these drug dealers were operating in the country illegally while targeting vulnerable Americans show the complete failure of Seattle's progressive immigration policies. The DOJ is still waiting on confirmation about the immigration status of the others, suggesting that more may be illegal. This is the second round of arrest, what they call the jungle, after 5 men were arrested for drugs and guns in January. But the problems persist because of Seattle's policies enabling these criminal networks to continue to operate.
According to the FBI,
This is the big hit for our team.
it's the second round of arrest in the jungle after 5 men were arrested for drugs and guns in January. But the problems persisted.
What makes this operation particularly evil is how these cartels and drug dealers specifically target Seattle's most vulnerable populations. They set up shop in the Chinatown International District and homeless encampments, knowing these communities had less protection and oversight. The community has been calling for more police presence and cleanup, but Seattle's progressive leaders were more concerned about not appearing racist or insensitive than protecting vulnerable communities from predatory drug dealers. According to the FBI, this was a big hit for the team, but it raises some questions about how many similar operations are still running in Seattle and other progressive cities that enable this kind of criminal activity. America, this Seattle operation exposes the deadly consequences of liberal drug policies. While progressive politicians were busy enabling addiction with harm reduction and sanctuary policies, Mexican cartels are getting rich by preying on the most vulnerable Americans. 1.5 million lethal doses of fentanyl, enough to kill everyone in Seattle twice. Dealers arranging drug deals from a Costco parking lot. Previously deported criminals returning to traffic drugs. This is what compassionate drug policies look like. The federal agents who conducted this operation deserve credit for taking these predators off the streets. But the real question is, how many more operations like this are happening in liberal cities across America? When you create an environment where drug use is normalized, borders aren't being enforced, and criminals face no consequences, you're essentially sending an invitation to cartels to set up shop and prey on American citizens. In my opinion, the solution isn't more safe injection sites or needle programs. It's aggressive law enforcement against drug dealers and secure borders to keep deported criminals from returning. As law enforcement said, they will continue to pursue these organizations and remove dangerous criminals to make communities safer. When progressive politicians talk about compassion for drug users, what they're really doing is creating hunting grounds for cartels to prey on vulnerable Americans. Let me know what you guys think about this. Drop it down in the comment section down below. Smash the like button if you kindly would. Share, subscribe, and as always, guys, I'll catch you on the next one.